Hello, and welcome to Look Behind You, the podcast where we talk about the paranormal, the supernatural, and everything in between. I am your host, Sir Boom, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ramen Cat.
Evening.
And Wolf.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the mysterious sightings from World War II that the fighter pilots of the time would call the Foo Fighters.
Wait a minute. You said... You lied. You said this was about the band.
No
Yes.
one lied.
Our paranormal podcast was going to do the band.
The band, the Foo Fighters.
The band made it hard to find things on the Foo Fighter.
The band was named after the Foo Fighters.
Oh, it was actually named after the Foo Fighters?
Yes. The Foo Fighters were named after the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Weird.
Great band, but back to you.
Yeah. So, yeah. How are my co-hosts doing?
Tired, confused,
You're always tired.
Partially insane,
mentally insane, and unstable at this moment.
but
Great.
great. How about you, Boom?
Well, besides for my fridge just turning on, I'm doing awesome,
It gives atmosphere.
I guess. I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Busy week.
Yeah, holidays kind of put everything in a kerfuffle.
Yeah, and just trying to schedule around them is awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, our topic for today, Foo Fighter. So the term Foo Fighter was used by Allied aircraft pilots during World War II to describe various UFOs or mysterious aerial phenomena seen in the skies over both the European and Pacific theater of operations.
Yes, so this is where we're going a little bit outside our realm. We are going to possibility of aliens.
No
Yay.
cryptids here.
We finally stopped doing monsters and actually did other paranormal stuff.
Well, we did the mansion, which was ghosts.
I guess we did do the mansion.
Yeah.
And we did Dartmoor.
But
which
this is covering the other half that we've never really touched upon.
yeah, that's
Maybe
true.
once in a while, like Mothman or something like that. I think we might have mentioned aliens.
I think that was shadow people.
or shadow people.
Yeah, Shadow People is one of them.
But yeah, this is first time into UFOs and potential extraterrestrial life or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess our first segment is, what is a Foo Fighter?
Well,
It's weird.
yes, because we're normally, like when we mention UFOs and stuff, a lot of people picture the flying saucer cliche
Yep.
type of thing. But Foo Fighters, for the most part, now this is not all of them, but for the most part, they were described as either red or orange balls of fire.
Multiple colors, yeah.
Yeah, or there was some that were reported green, white. A lot of pilots said that they were like looking at Christmas lights.
Yep.
And then there are some that were described as like balls of fire with like a tail behind them, you know, like flames whiffing off them.
Yeah, like a comet almost.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
Comet
to
or a
me would be
meteor.
really creepy to see a comet just fly alongside you.
Yeah,
Um,
it would.
Then there are some that are a little bit more bizarre. Like there are some that reported that looked like silver cigars that kind of wobbled in the sky.
Yeah.
There were some that were described almost like a Zeppelin, but like the way that they were built was not like what is Zeppelin is
Our
supposed
normal
to be.
Zeppelin would
A
be
couple of the descriptions of them were very close to like Zeppelins and airships.
Yeah. And then there was, I believe, one that was just described as like a silver ball, like a metallic ball, which I don't know. To me, that's like the most unnerving of all of them for some reason.
Yeah, a couple of them took different formations. So like when the lights came together, some like one made like a giant T. The
Yep.
other one kind of looked like basically a row of 4 on top and then a row of 4 on the bottom.
Yep, where they were stacked. I guess
So 2x4.
it would be very important to mention that one of the things of the Foo Fighters, also their feature, I guess it would be, is the fact of these are all basically pilot oriented things. Like there's a few that aren't.
Yeah, there's basically everything that is a Foo Fighter reference is strictly military driven.
Yeah.
Especially, it basically goes between the years of 1944, well, actually all the way up to 2021.
Yes.
But
these are known to, I don't know how you put it more than, they are known to pursue aircraft.
Yes.
Never bring harm or anything, but they have been known to trail behind aircraft by, a matter of feet, or like fly along like the wings of planes and stuff, or like you said, fly in T formation or stack formation. Like, it's not something that just kind of haphazardly goes this way and that way. Like, it's always following an aircraft, or it's sitting still, but its emotions and stuff are always seem to be driven with purpose. They don't move erratically.
Right. A lot of them were said to. Well, actually, let's hold that on for later. But for right now, this is a good point. The actual word "foo," referring to the Foo Fighters, emerged in a popular culture during the early 1930s, first being used by cartoonist Bill Holman, who peppered his Smokey Stover fireman cartoon strips with foo signs and puns. The term foo was borrowed from Smokey Stover by a radar operator in the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, Donald J. Myers, who it is agreed by most 415th members gave the Foo Fighters their name. He was from Chicago with an avid reader of Holman's strips. So basically, he was a native of Chicago and just read a lot of the cartoons.
Yep, he was a big fan of it, and he was the one, I believe, that gave the phrase of calling them Foo Fighters.
Yeah, he was the first one to cite technically the first Foo Fighter, and that's what he called it. Because
He's the one that gave the Foo Fighter its name. He wasn't necessarily the first person that saw one.
Right. But he is the one that coined the term Foo Fighter.
And the reason is because in the Smokey Stover thing, the Smokey Stover is supposedly a firefighter, and
he would call the fire
he
Foo.
he called it the fire Foo, and he called himself a Foo Fighter. So basically, when Donald saw like the weird sightings in the sky, they looked like giant balls of fire, right? So fire, Foo.
Yeah.
Also, Foo was also a nonsense word.
Right. So it kind of makes sense. Something that makes no sense in the air, it's a Foo Fighter. Like, what the heck is it?
Yeah, it's this thing that makes no sense to everything else that we've been dealing with.
Right, exactly.
And it just shows up.
So that's the meaning of the Foo Fighter. That's kind of where it first originated from. And that also kind of leads us into some of the other odd things that Foo Fighters would do. So a lot of people say they were giant balls of fire, but these wouldn't just float around and just kind of hover and stuff. A lot of them would actually explode and do different things when they even exploded. One was a giant ball of green, and it would just randomly explode. And another one would show up and randomly explode again. Another one, there's like sets of 5 of them, and like one just randomly exploded while it's just floating there. And then it's just a bunch of weird. Almost it seemed like they were just like fireworks.
Kind of.
Besides where they just float in the sky longer than a firework really should.
Yeah. Well, there was also records of some too that it's like when pilots encountered them, they were doing, because they didn't know what this thing was that was following them. It just showed up out of nowheres, in the middle of a war zone. And so they'd try to evade it as if they had a enemy pilot pursuing them.
Right.
And these things, a lot of them were said to be able to complete very complex air maneuvers.
A lot of them were able to outmaneuver a lot of the pilots.
Yeah. It's like at that point, it's almost like when the pilots tried to avoid them, it was like the things took it as, oh, you're trying to race me.
Yeah.
In one of the stories, it even followed a fighter through clouds.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hard to do.
Yeah, because usually that's, if I remember it, the old times for fighting, it's like you usually kind of broke off from your target and try to re-engage.
Yeah, well, that
elsewhere.
was like kind of the surefire method for breaking off from people, is like you'd either find smoke or you'd find like a cloud and just kind of like fly through it, because
you could change your
you
maneuvers.
could change your maneuver. You could either like go up really quick or you could go down. But the in that one scenario, it's like a small group of
It was two was following
yeah, it was like
him.
2 lights was just following him and was able to keep track of him even through the clouds.
I believe that was over the Pacific.
There were also some too that reports were that pilots, a lot of them just eventually got really curious about these, because I'm assuming because they seen them so frequently.
Yep.
That they would basically conduct their own experiment of like they'd try shooting them down just for bullets to do nothing to them,
Or they would explode.
or they would explode. Yeah, some exploded, like Boom and Wolf said, and then others would just, like, one pilot I remember reading just basically tried ramming it with his plane.
Yep.
And he just went through it. Like, it disappeared and then just reformed behind him and just pursued him.
Right, like almost like it phased out of existence and like phased back in.
Yeah.
Which would be really cool yet really scary.
I don't know. If I was a pilot in World War II and having it to do with things like Luftwaffe and stuff, I don't think I'd be finding it very fun.
No.
No, I wouldn't.
I would be fearing for my life.
Oh yeah, for sure. That would be horrifying, to say the least, to have these things flying around you like you're basically a toy in the air, as they're making insane flights in different angles and doing phase shifting and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
that'd be terrifying. So a little bit of history about the Foo Fighters. Who wants to cover that really quick?
I can cover that real quick.
All right.
So sightings occurred in November 1944 when pilots were flying over the Western European regions.
The first sighting, correct?
Yes, this is the first sighting.
Okay.
It was a flight at night.
Yep.
Because all of these take place at night. I don't think I encountered a single story where it was in the daytime.
No, not that I can recall.
And they
Yeah,
reported seeing fast-moving, round, glowing objects that were following their aircraft. The objects were variously described as fiery and glowing red, white, or orange. I also have seen where some of these things would, not too many, but like where they would kind of shift colors and stuff.
Oh boy, they're RGB.
Yeah, pretty much.
I wonder if I can sync it to my Google Home Assistant now.
Google Home, can you make the Foo Fighter turn green? Some pilots described them as resembling Christmas tree lights, as we said earlier, and reported that they seemed to toy with the aircraft.
Yep.
A lot of these had a very playful nature, I guess you could call it, in what they did. And they would make wild turns before just simply vanishing. So I guess that would be another important thing, is a lot of these were reported like pilots would even try to pursue them just for them to blink out
Right.
and just be gone completely. Pilots and aircrew reported that the objects flew together in formation with their aircraft and behaved as if they were under intelligent control, but never displayed hostile behavior. However, they could not be outmaneuvered or shot down. Now, that didn't go into too much detail, but that was 1944 was when the first encounters were.
Yes.
And that was by
Did you say
That-
1944 or 1942?
1944.
right, and that
Okay.
was the squadron of the 415th,
Yep.
Yep.
the night fighter squadron.
And then on the 13th of December of 1944, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force in Paris, my apologies, issued a press release which was featured in the New York Times the next day, officially describing the phenomenon as a new German weapon, which I am sure back then, with how bad the war was going on, that did not probably go over well with the public.
No.
Like, not against like the press or anything like that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that left some people very afraid. Which, unlike nowadays, it's like with stuff like that, they were a lot more open to the people of what was going on,
Right.
basically.
Well, in 1944 was basically right after the war started.
Yeah,
Like,
it was the peak of it.
Yeah.
well,
it was-
actually not right after the war started, but like when America entered. So it's like we're not sure what they're capable of.
Right.
Exactly.
Every turn in the war was something
Right.
new getting thrown at the Allies.
Are you talking about the Times article, right?
Yes.
No, that's
No,
1945. That's a year later.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the at the 15th of January 1945, that edition of the Time magazine carried a story entitled Foo Fighters, in which it reported that the balls of fire had followed the USAAF night fighters for over a month, and that the pilots had named it Foo Fighters. According to the Time, descriptions of the phenomena varied, but the pilots agreed that the mysterious lights followed their aircraft closely at high speeds.
A excerpt from the Times article says, if it was not a hoax or an optical illusion, it was certainly the most puzzling secret weapon that Allied fighters have yet encountered. Last week, U.S. night fighter pilot based in France told a strange story of balls of fire which for more than a month have been following their planes at night over Germany. No one seemed to know what, if anything, the fireballs were supposed to accomplish. Pilots are guessing that it was a new psychological weapon, named it the Foo Fighter.
That's directly out of the original New York Times article.
Yep.
Yep.
Monday, January 15th, 1945, not 1990.
I don't know. Do you want to continue with that one, or?
It's fairly short.
It's fairly short. Yeah, I could read it a little bit.
Okay.
Their description of the operation varied, but they agreed that the mysterious flare stuck close to their planes and appeared to follow them at high speed for miles. One pilot said that a Foo Fighter appearing as red balls off his wingtips stuck with him until he dove at 360 miles an hour. Then the balls zoomed up into the sky. Skeptical scientists, baffled by the whole affair, were inclined to dismiss the fireball as an illusion, perhaps an afterimage of light which remained in the pilot's eye after they had been dazzled by flak bursts. So flak bursts were artillery shots that were basically like they'd shoot giant flash grenades.
Well, they were cannon rounds, basically.
Yes, they would blow up a ship, but their point was to flash.
Yeah.
It's basically like giant shrapnel bombs. And what it'd do is, like, when pilots were transporting troops, they'd fire them up there and it'd just shred
The
airplanes
planes apart. Yep.
Yeah. And it'd
Although-
also blind pilots as well.
I don't know. It's like, I know that the eyes do weird things, but almost to me, it's like that would make you totally blind. I would think, flying in dark and then just you have like a burst of light, but to see something pursuing you, basically. And the fact of it's like usually when you have weird optical illusions like that of like having just been blinded, you don't see colors readily.
Have you looked at like a light and then looked away and it's just kind of stuck with you for a while?
Yeah, like it's just like white.
It's just white and it's just there wherever you look in that spot. I think that's what they were talking about.
Right.
But that doesn't explain for it than just going straight up into the air because it just fade away.
Yeah, it should
It would just fade away, yeah.
Yeah.
The next part is from the frontline correspondents and armchair experts had a Buck Rogers field day, which is a really old joke.
Really old show, comic book, and everything.
They solemnly guessed, one, that the balls of fire were radio controlled, an obvious absurdity since they could not be synchronized with a plane's movement by remote control. 2, that they were created by electrical induction of some sort. And 3, that they were attracted to a plane by magnetism.
That's going on the thing that might be a secret weapon.
Right.
I could, on one hand, I could see it being magnetism, but at the other point, it's like, shouldn't they latch onto the planes
Well,
at that point? I guess that'd
nowadays technology, we can program something
be to repel off, basically.
No, we can program something to follow but not touch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's not through magnetism.
No, that would be through the radio control. So like we have, people have probably seen videos of them. We have drone imaging,
Yep.
where they take hundreds of drones with different lights, and they synchronize them all to like follow each other and like dance around to make different images.
Yep, and I've seen even with they were doing for a national security thing. I've seen it on TV where there's drones where it's like there's one basically master drone,
Yes.
and then they'll have hundreds of other drones, and then they all just that drone calculates and thinks everything,
Yep.
and then they all just move as that drone orders them to do.
But obviously, no superpower or no country back in 1945 had any capability to do that whatsoever. They didn't even have, rockets that really locked onto targets. So.
No, they had eventually the V2 rocket, but that
Which came out fairly soon after this event.
Yeah,
It did.
but that was basically point and launch at target.
Yes. Next segment, the correspondents further guessed that the Foo Fighters were intended, 1, to dazzle pilots, 2, to serve as aiming points for anti-aircraft gunners, 3, to interfere with a plane's radar, 4, to cut a plane's ignition, then stop its engine in midair. Wow, that fourth one's really a stretch.
It is, but I could see someone trying to make something like that.
Like if it would be magnetized into the fuselage,
Yeah.
then
It
that would
mess
just
with the engine and
and it
stuff.
just dropped the plane out of air.
Yeah. The last part here, some scientists suggested another possibility, that the fireballs were nothing more than St. Elmo's fire, a reddish brush-like discharge of atmospheric electricity, which has often been seen near the tips of church steeples, ship's masts, and yardums. It often appears as a plane's wing tips. Last month, pilots reported that they had been seen mysterious floating silvery balls, apparently another secret weapon in daylight flights over Germany. Oh,
so there was a
they
daylight
were.
encounter.
Okay.
I did not realize that.
It's just a small excerpt at the bottom of this article, so that's interesting.
But yeah, that I really find that interesting because that literally came out like a week after the event happened.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, the European division of that was doing research into that, like they withheld information for a while and then released it later
Yes.
on
Yep.
when they felt that it would not, I guess, disturb the public.
More probably create mass panic, so
Well, probably mass panic, and given the proximity of that they were to their enemies at that point, they probably didn't want to just be like, oh yeah, we just found this out yesterday, just for them to change strategy.
Yep.
now mind you, the word flying saucer or UFO was actually not popularized until after World War II.
I think it was
Right.
around like the late 50s.
It was around the 50s. I forget the exact date,
I
but
want to say like 56.
Right, because the recorded encounters and stuff at that point were with saucer-shaped objects or spherical objects and stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of the basic history of it. We do have a bunch of sightings as well as some alternative ideas of what they could be.
Yep.
But right now we're gonna go ahead and jump into a break.
Okay.
Okay.
Enjoy the Foo Fighter Light Show, folks.
We will be back with more stories. See y'all on the other side.
See ya.
Bye.
And we're back. Welcome
Hello.
back.
Hello.
And we are talking about Foo Fighters. So, all right, we're going to go into the sightings. Yes,
The sightings.
the sightings.
Cool.
So, Wolf.
I don't have any of them pulled up right now. I was looking at a different article.
I will shuffle my parchment of my grimoire right
Ah,
over to you.
there.
Apparently, I already have to correct myself. The first sighting was not 1944. It was actually 1941 in September.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, start with that one.
Sighting from September 1941 in the Indian Ocean was similar to some later Foo Fighter reports. From the deck of the SS Pulaski,
You got it.
a Polish merchant vessel transporting British troops. That's why the name's a little weird for me. It's Polish. Two sailors reported a strange globe glowing with greenish light about half the size of the full moon, as it appeared to us. They alerted a British officer who watched the movements of the object with them for over an hour.
I'm just picturing these three guys just standing on the deck of the ship like, you seeing this? Yeah.
How about you?
Should we go get somebody else? Yeah.
when we talk about more of these sightings, one of the things that I find really interesting about like the Foo Fighters is they last forever. It seems like an hour.
Yeah.
Well, some do. Some just kind of blip in and blip out.
Well, a lot of them would last, like the ones that would stick with them, for like as at minimum like 15 minutes. Some would go like an hour and a half. I felt, and like if it was just like a ball of fire, it wouldn't be there for that long.
Yeah, it should just burn and extinguish.
It would burn and extinguish within like a minute, I would think.
What's the next sighting?
Okay. Charles R. Bastian of the U.S. 8th Air Force reported one of the first encounters with Foo Fighters over the Belgium/Netherlands area. He described them as two fog lights flying at high rates of speed that could change direction rapidly. During debriefing, his intelligence officer told him that two RAF night fighters had reported the same thing and was later reported in British newspapers.
Honestly, like, to me, if I was a pilot, that would be more terrifying than just, oh, I had a weird thing happen to me.
Yeah.
Well, so did Jeff and Bob. Oh.
Yeah.
Quick thing, sorry if I stop sometimes, I have a tiny sore throat.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. You need to tell me this.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Okay.
You want me to go to the next one?
Sure.
Career U.S. Air Force pilot Dune Adams often related that he had witnessed two occurrences of a bright light which passed his aircraft for about half an hour and then rapidly ascended into the sky. Both incidents occurred at night, both over the South Pacific, and both were witnessed by the entire aircraft crew. The first sighting occurred shortly after the end of World War II, while Adams piloted a B-25 bomber. The second sighting occurred in early 1960s when Adam was piloting a KC-135 tanker.
So he had multiple encounters then.
Holy mackerel. So this guy flew a B-52 bomber, which was huge.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to flying a Boeing KC-135 Stroto tanker.
Yeah, which is like probably 3 times as big as a B-25.
It's a lot big. It refuels F-19s and
Oh,
stuff.
you have it pulled up.
Yeah. Well, I like planes, so I was just
Dang,
like,
that's huge.
it is
Yeah, it's quite a chunk of metal flying in the sky. If you want, I can read the next two.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
The next one, Senator Ted Stevens described an encounter from the time he was in the U.S. Air Force and was a fighter pilot in the European theater of World War II. As recounted by Senator Harry Reid, I was flying and there was an object next to me. I couldn't get rid of it. I slowed up. It was there. I sped up. It was there. I'd dive. It would be there. I called. Nothing on radar. So
That's weird.
Yeah.
And that's actually like one of the most probably reputable ones because Senator Theodore Fulton Stevens was an American politician who served as a United States Senator from Alaska from 1968 to 2009. He was the longest serving Republican U.S. Senator in history at the time he left office. His record was surpassed in January 2007 by Orrin Hatch from Utah. So, like, this guy was a politician for a long time.
yeah. And our next and last one actually
Jumps up to like earlier this year.
Yeah. Pakistan International Airlines, PIA, pilots spotted a Foo Fighter in the skies of Karachi during domestic flight of a PK-304 on Saturday, 26th of January 2001 in daylight. All right, so here's another one from
I actually
day.
saw the video for this.
Really? Because I couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, I was actually able to find a Pakistan newspaper site, and they had the video on it.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, okay. According to details, the PI aircraft was flying at 35,000 feet when the flight captain noticed a white round object above the jet. The flight crew immediately started filming the object, and after landing, found that similar sightings had been reported in the past across the world. The flight captain said that the round object had a metal ring around it and was emitting white light from the center. He added that it was difficult to determine whether the object was hovering or moving slow due to relative motion. A Punjab University scientist offered the opinion that the observable was a lenticular cloud.
How does a lenticular cloud have a ring and a light in the
I'm
middle?
not even sure what lenticular cloud means, but
Let's Google it.
Jeez.
Learning on the spot. Here we
Yeah,
go.
But there's no other clouds in the sky.
Okay.
I'm looking at the video
That
right
looks
now.
kind of cool, but that is not a UFO.
No. Okay, so
Basically,
these
just
they look like a
picture
mountain.
a giant floating
Okay.
blob,
I'm gonna get your guys' two reactions.
but it's
on
not
this.
a cloud. It's a cloud, but like it's a blob.
Yeah, it's something you'd have to look. It does. Some of them look like pancakes or jellyfish, but
Give me one
Yeah.
second.
I guess.
but at the same time, I cannot see that being a mistaken for a UFO. I've been in planes or jets, and clouds are
Actually, open
pretty
up the article.
pretty definitive.
Right. Where are we?
That's
Yeah.
a video, but I believe that's an ad in front of it.
Oh, that wasn't ad. I clicked on the ad accidentally. Now Metallica's playing. I don't know how to restart this ad. Oh, there we go. Click on it again. All right, so we're looking at the PIA pilot claiming that he saw a thing. They're saying it's actually a lenticular cloud.
Yeah, but the distance here in that video, I don't know how you could just say, yeah, that's a cloud.
Nah, that's not a cloud. That's a dot. That is a dot. A cloud you can see has like depth of field. This is
wisp.
like a dot.
Yeah, just a dot of light. I mean, it could be not to be that person, but I mean, it could even just be the moon at their angle.
It could be,
could
but
be.
the moon is even more seeable.
Yeah,
But
and
the human eye can see quite a bit of detail from quite far away.
yeah,
So that was interesting. But yeah, it's basically a white dot from the camera angle.
now granted, there's also this thing for modern days, the fact that there's drones flying everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, but they saw this from an airplane, and has his phone pointed up out of the window.
Oh, upwards, like it's above us.
Yeah, like it's even above where they're at.
Okay. Yeah, and at that point, it's like that's up.
That's pretty high.
Yeah.
They're already up by like cloud level.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, that was a couple of the notable sightings of them. I guess our next part would be going into
Explanations and theories?
yeah.
Whee.
So of course the biggest explanation is the Nazis did it.
Well, of course.
But then the Nazis blame the Allies for it.
Yeah, a fun fact about this, after the war, people were like asking the other side, so what was that? And they're like, I don't know, I thought it was you.
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
But
what if
a
it's
lot-
that guy?
A lot of people presume that the Nazis were making superior aircraft to outmaneuver any of the aircraft that the Allied forces would have. They were literally making UFO for Nazis.
I
Yes.
believe there was actually a prototype that they found.
They were trying to create. I'm going off mostly top of my head because
Same here.
I looked into it a lot, but they were trying to create anti-gravity that would allow basically this cylinder, not this cylinder, but like this orb
Disc.
surrounded by a disc to generate anti-gravity to float
Yeah.
and fly. And they had a prototype. They tried it. They were getting somewhere, but of course, well,
The
we
war
had to go
ended.
knock on their doorstep. So,
Yeah. Also, out of this time too, they did build the V2 Ballistic
they
Rocket.
did.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe at the very tail end they even had started into the process of building jets, even didn't they?
Well, that was where the V2 rocket was going.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but like I think they actually by the end of it, there were cases of encounters with actual like operational jets and stuff.
I don't know, honestly. I have not heard of that.
But there's also the what's it called? The theory of it being a weapon called my German is terrible. Fearball or fireball.
I can find the name of it, but I can't pronounce it.
You are right. The Germans did develop, of course, they developed the V1 and V2 rockets in the first operational jet-powered ME-262 fighter planes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I guess those would also be considered a Foo Fighter as well. Besides for these were actually dangerous because they shot people.
They were the real Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
So that would be considered a Foo Fighter at first because there'd be no way that we'd know what that is at first.
And
moving way too fast.
Yeah, and some cocky pilot that gets to be like the first guy to go into combat with that.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to zip past these guys and make them confused.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could definitely see then if jet fighters basically got introduced into the battlefield where some stories could be those.
Yeah.
But for the majority where they're not actually hurting anything.
No.
But there is also the weapon that was called the fireball, which is
German word for fireball. The
Yeah.
Führer ball.
Yeah. And that, if I remember right from what I was reading, it's basically it had a rocket to propel it up, or like a little jet motor basically, and then it relied on electrical conducting tubes to basically give it a pinwheel effect so it would spin in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I remember, it had basically that magnetic effect, like it would kind of pull itself towards a body. And then if I remember right, it also said too, it's like it had something in it, so if it was shot, it would shoot up into the air.
So I have a list of things. So this whole story kind of sprouts out of a man named Rintero Visco.
Okay.
He wrote some books and about like the Foo Fighters.
Okay.
And he called them like the Führer balls and the Kurgel Blitz. He says that he was actually one of the people that were working on the project. Now, of course, people have kind of done like the math on like how old he is and how old he would have been when he said like he graduated college. He would have been around like 19 in Germany.
Okay.
And there's kind of a lot of holes that you can punch into his story, but he describes the thing as it was a circular and armored, more or less resembling the shell of a tortoise, was enormous looking. During the day it looked like a shining disc spinning on its axis, and during the night it looked like a burning globe. Was powered by a special turbine engine, also flat and circular, which generated a great halo of luminous flames around its perimeter.
Okay.
Was unarmed and pilotless, not pointless. Was radio controlled at the moment of takeoff. Automatically followed enemy aircraft attracted by their exhaust flames. Approached close enough to the enemy aircraft without collision to wreck the radio gear. Carried large clayston radio tubes protected with special anti-shock and anti-heat armor. It could be used simultaneously in formation with other of it. Contained a strong explosive charge to destroy it in flight in case serious damage to the automatic guidance system made it impossible for the operations to control it. And then there's a couple more that are fairly long explanations. So basically what he says it's like a flare.
Like a flare, like a disruptor.
Yep, it would follow the airplane. It would disrupt the radio gear, and like the wiki said, it would try to like disrupt the engines or attach to it.
Yeah.
And it was, from what I think, it was trying to like portray it as is like so the gunners could see the airplane wherever it moved.
Yeah, because all they'd have to do at that point is if it's right behind it by a few yards, they know to shoot in front of it.
Yep, but like I also said, a lot of people have found ways to poke holes into his whole story about it.
I could see a few things like that. I'm not sure when that was released, but yeah, if he was 19. But you never know because geniuses crop up all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing is the way it sounds. The body sounds a little bulky to be able to fly for something like that.
Well, and that's kind of the point. That's kind of the mystery behind a UFO is the body just does not seem to.
It shouldn't work.
Right, because the way they maneuver, like a disc can fly through the air really well. That's why we have frisbees, right?
Yeah, they glide.
They glide. But when they start going straight up,
Yeah.
Wind and gravity, well, not gravity, but like pressure does not like a flat disc going straight up in the air.
No.
Well, with his story, it wouldn't just stay flat. It would kind of like a gyroscope would move all around. It would do that. So it kind of
Okay,
spin.
but yeah, still like that would fix the maneuverability thing. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And supposedly the reason it would go straight up is on its shell. It would have a insulated lining of aluminum. And when a bullet would pierce that, it would send an electrical trigger to the engine just to send it straight up.
Okay.
And
So
then
it's like-
explode it.
So kind of like how toy drones and probably even regular drones now, it's like when they reach it or they're beyond a signal or their battery dies, some of them are set to just, all right, I'll stop right here.
Right.
But this would do the opposite.
It would do the
Send
opposite,
it
so it
straight
could
up.
go up and then they could recover it probably when it came down.
Yeah, his saying was so that it couldn't be recovered by enemy or identified.
Right.
And then the last theory for Nazis is that the Nazis were dealing with occultic things,
That's a big thing that they did.
where they actually had whole divisions actually devoted to occultic research and stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to say, I could be totally wrong about this, so don't take my word for
Well,
this.
we're only talking
but
about Nazis
we're only talking about Nazis and
and
UFOs.
UFOs.
Anything's up.
Aleister Crowley
Okay.
was being recruited. He never did it, but he was being recruited by Hitler to actually help him with his occultic research.
Okay. Well, that went backwards in his face.
Well, he never joined in or anything.
No, but I do know like there's stories of like Aleister Crowley helping like Allied forces with another occult research, and like they would hold like, full-on rituals against
Yeah.
Nazi forces, and it's like, oh,
But so the theory is that when they were doing their occultic rituals and research, that they opened up other worldly things, which is why you would see all the Foo Fighters and stuff. They were basically spirits and other such things like that, which is why when you fired upon them,
It was
nothing would happen,
dispersed.
Yeah.
or things would just randomly explode. It was all chaotic, basically underworld devil stuff.
yeah.
Like, that's one theory. Obviously it's not any solid evidence, but that's one
Right.
theory I know of.
There's also just the very commonly believed thing that Foo Fighters were extraterrestrials that were curious why we were ripping each other apart.
I could honestly see that. Just like,
I mean, I could too. If you were coming from another world, it's like, why are these guys fighting?
why are there so many flashes of light in their atmosphere?
Ooh, what's this thing? I want to study it.
Yeah.
There's also a theory that time travelers
Yeah,
course.
observing it.
saying, "Hey, here's World War II. You want to see a bunch of people fight?"
Yeah.
Through all my research, I didn't see anything about time traveling.
I seen a little bit here
Really?
and there.
Yeah, but of course you would be the one to find it.
Well, it's everywhere. Everybody thinks if you see a UFO, it's just the common theory of it's time travelers.
Oh, okay, yeah, I guess.
I guess this is kind of where we bleed over into the speculations.
I honestly
What we've been
had
doing.
No, I mean our own.
our own.
Oh,
I
right,
honestly,
that's what we've been doing.
Yes, but no. But
It's
yes.
just the Nazis were the only one that had an actual article to back it up.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I don't even have like my own theory on what it would be. It's
I
just
got
too
lots of theories.
bizarre.
Well, we can say this one thing about it. They definitely happened for the fact that the military of every faction at the time was like, there is something going on here.
So hear me out. Since Bigfoot was being bullied so much on the ground,
I will
they
stop you there.
decided to start flying, and they just ended up in World War II. And
This
they're like,
isn't
well, frick.
SCP-2000. Get out. I hope it's SCP-2000.
I would love it if that was true, but I don't think it is.
They're like, they keep on shooting us on the ground. We'll fly then. Oh dang, they're shooting us in the air too.
It's Bigfoot with jet boots.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so for some of the ones that they actually see the bodies of these things, I could get on board with the idea of extraterrestrials. The ones that are the fact they're basically just balls of fire or energy, I don't know. I feel like there's something a little bit more supernatural to that because when you look at things like in lore and stuff in Asia, and they have stories of basically ghosts that are just living things of fire that dance about in the sky and do their thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden these show up in places like the Pacific regions and Europe where
Over major battlefields
and stuff. I almost feel like the war was so harsh and devastating that they probably disturbed something or a lot of somethings.
What if it's the old North mythology of Valkyries on the battlefield?
Could be maybe in like Celtic mythology that or past that's like things like that showed up over battlefields and that's what they thought it was.
I think I did see something where people are speculating
that could be.
Well, I know in World War One, a lot of people kept on thinking they saw like angels and stuff on their sides.
Yeah. It could be some weird conductive thing because the fact of it's like really the first time that here's a bunch of chunks of metal flying through the sky in huge amounts.
Yeah. Maybe we disturbed something in the air.
Yeah. I mean, we could have just been simply messing with the atmosphere. I mean, we had radar, we had planes, we had all this new stuff.
We had bombs,
radio,
shooting explosives into the air.
We had people trying to split the atom.
Yeah.
people splitting the atom.
So it could just simply be the environment reacting to being manipulated and tampered with.
Yeah.
There's also kind of like the famous UFO and extraterrestrial theory about aliens only really getting interested in us because of like our capability of getting nuclear power. Which kind of could coincide with this because World War II led up to us using the nuclear bomb and discovering nuclear power. So it could have been them observing us at a closer glimpse because they knew we were on kind of the brink of it.
Yeah, like, what pushes them to advance?
Are they actually going to do it? Do we actually have to kind of like be worried about them because they're going to be splitting the atom all over the place?
Yeah.
See, that's my theory, that aliens are just time travelers.
How did that have to do with anything I was just saying?
Well, of course, time travelers, if they're aliens, like, they'd be interested when we split the atom.
Oh, you're talking about alien time travelers.
Well, that too, but just time travelers are just aliens. Aliens are just time travelers. That's what I meant.
Yeah, no, I know what you meant. Kind of like on like the sub theories of like things like Mothman and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, could be.
Yeah.
That's my theory. I mean, it makes the most sense to me. It's just like, why the heck are all these things just floating around and not doing anything?
I do think some of the ones that they reported that were more solid looking things more than likely were man-made, probably experimental aircrafts that just proved to not be worth the resources or just were failures.
Yeah, that could be, I guess.
I mean, like the silver ball looking thing could have just been a new form of air balloon with like maybe a payload on it or something.
Oh, come on, that would be great. As soon as it runs out of ammo, it is the ammo.
And like I said earlier, some of the descriptions of like the Zeppelin looking ones, where it's like it was like a big balloon, and then it had like lights like a wind, like lights through a window like a Zeppelin window. I'm like, you just described a Zeppelin.
Yeah, it was probably just it was probably the final like trying to refine Zeppelins because they could transport lots of people.
Yeah.
Well, passenger ones. They never used them to transport soldiers or anything because that was very impractical.
Well,
But-
yeah, because it could just, I don't know, ignite.
Yeah, but they were also used because the fact of they were great for observing the battlefield until planes came along and shredded everything in the skies.
Like if you could actually like get a Zeppelin to lift and get heavy armor on it, where when it just like, I'm gonna shoot my pistol at this balloon and it explodes, it would have been a great, just slow moving air vessel.
Yeah.
And in World War One, it did see use like that, where people would just
lot.
lob stuff out the baskets of them.
Go depth mine.
Boom.
They could be, as we said, and as the article said, it could be a form of basically magnetic weaponry.
Yep.
But it would seem like at that point, somebody or a lot more people rather than just one person would come forward like, yeah, so the Nazis tried using this weird weapon.
Right.
Well, a lot of times the conspiracy theorists would be like, well, that group of people that were researching it just
Scrap the project.
either scrapped it or just kind of kept it secret and still worked on it.
Yeah.
Just like kind of not let anybody know about it, and like went to Antarctic or something, or like Africa.
Yeah, I mean, there is that thing that goes with like the Nazi UFOs thing of a core thing, and that is that there was a faction of Nazis that went to the Arctic to work on the project of it.
That kind of sprouts out because the Nazis actually did do an expedition
Yeah,
to
they
the
did.
Antarctic.
They claimed a region of it. And
Yep.
stuff, but that's like part of that. I don't know, really. It could be anything because, as we know, as of what was it, this year or last year, it's pretty much globally acknowledged that we have unidentified bodies floating around the planet.
It was this year.
It was
This year.
earlier this year. Yeah, I believe the U.S. Congress but they requested information from the UAP task force to actually give them basically a debrief.
Yeah, and they also changed UFO from UFO to, I believe, UFA?
UAPs.
UAPs.
Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yep.
Which is
Instead of unidentified object.
which is interesting because the name just
me pull up that
evolves over time. They were Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they were UFOs. And
Well, aerial phenomenon kind of changes the definition to, instead of object being a solid thing, it could be, like
lot
you're
of-
saying, something more spiritual or something
Well-
more like natural that we still don't understand.
I think the reason they did that is because there are the things like St. Elmo's fire, which is just suddenly an object becomes so charged up with electricity, it's discharging it.
You're right.
Or ball lightning, which was a theory too, but ball lightning has such a short life
Right.
where it's like just electricity, and it's an acknowledged thing. It exists. There's no conspiracy behind it or anything. They just can't study them.
Yep.
Where it's just this electricity condenses and then it just travels down a channel and then usually splats against something or disperses. So it's like, I could see it being things like that because I imagine with how our atmosphere is and stuff, there's probably a lot of just not recorded weird electrical anomalies.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, electricity is such a random and chaotic thing that it's really easy to have random things happen with it.
Well, especially like nowadays when it's like you have so many particles from things traveling
Yeah.
through the air.
To kind of correct myself from earlier, the UAP task force was actually approved in August 4th of 2020. So it is actually a fairly new thing.
Well, there was an approval date and then there was a release date for
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah.
preliminary assessment was delivered on June 25th of 2021.
Okay.
Sorry, I just want to correct myself.
But yeah, it's just so many different encounters with these things, and yet at the same time, they differ enough that it could be a million different things.
Yeah. And I think that just about sums it all up, really. It's so many different things that it could be that it's hard to pinpoint on what it actually is.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of brings us towards the end, because with that, it sums up everything that the military knows so far of aircraft,
Yeah.
UFOs, at least for the last giant world war that we ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, they still consider other UFO sightings as Foo Fighters sometimes, but basically after that, in 1957, the term UFO became popular.
Yeah.
47.
Or 47, yeah.
That's what I meant. 47, not 57. Whoops.
And then it got cemented into culture just with Hollywood, with movies, old B movies and sci-fi movies.
You had
and
Roswell, the Fleetwood Monster.
But that will be topics for another day.
Yeah,
I definitely want to do those.
Yeah.
Because
I'm actually excited that we're kind of dipping into this. I didn't think I would like it, but it's actually pretty cool because we're finding with this, like, don't get me wrong, I love researching monsters and spirits and all that stuff, but to find like documents that are actually backed by, hey, a lot of people have looked into this.
Yeah, and it's
nice.
It's really cool to actually have some solid actual like explanation. Confirmation. That's the word for it.
Yep.
So that's cool. And with that, we're gonna bring it to a close. This has been Look Behind You, the podcast that you go to listen to the paranormal and supernatural, because we're all quite weird people.
And now UFOs.
I prefer bizarre.
Bizarre. Unexplained.
Bizarre is such a weird word.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Shut up.
There's bizarre, like weird, and then there's bazaar, like a market.
And then there's Bazinga.
And then there's bazinga.
All right. Well, anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can leave us a review on iTunes or Podchaser, or you can even just let us know that you liked it on Twitter. You can get a hold of us on Twitter by looking up @BehindYouPod. And then if you want to look up anywhere else for the podcast, you can just basically Google search Look Behind You.
Yay, Google has acknowledged us.
We are also on YouTube, just the podcast and our other secondary podcast, I guess it is.
Yeah,
where we
we
talk
need to
about
do
the random stuff.
hobby
we need to
thing.
do an episode of that. It's been a while.
It's been a long while, but yeah, we'll do an episode of that soon. And that you can find by just looking up Look Behind You as well.
Yep. It's crammed in there somewhere.
Yep. And then, yeah, if you do really like this episode, please think about maybe sharing it with your friends and family, or maybe just random people on the side of the road. I don't know, just write it on like a piece of paper and just slap it to somebody's back.
Just
Bootleg a copy and sell it out the back of the van.
Just put it on
No,
your
don't do that.
Please don't do that.
Put it on your radio in your vehicle. Roll down all the windows. If you have a sunroof, open that. Turn your volume up to not 100, but 99. And then just drive about 25 miles per hour through a suburb.
That sounds like you would get
Propaganda.
arrested for that.
You would. So don't do that.
All right. And with that, I have been Sir Boom. You can follow me on Twitter @SirBoom9. And Ramen Cat, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter @RamenCat13.
Awesome. And Wolf, where can they find you?
Currently only on the Twitter, but I'm having a little bit of problem getting onto it, so it might be a little hard for me to find a tweet if you directly ask me something.
Okay. But what Twitter?
Our podcast Twitter.
Okay, so if they
The
want
one
to
you
talk
said.
to you, go to @BehindYouPod.
Yes.
Awesome.
He's the guardian wolf of the Twitter page.
The Lost Wolf currently,
The
because
lost wolf. He went to use the bathroom and couldn't find his way back.
Well, wolves don't have opposable thumbs, so it's kind of hard for them to tweet sometimes.
yeah, when the app gets deleted, it's hard to get it back.
Just nose press the phone.
All right. And with that, we hope that you have a great rest of your rest of your time until we do another episode. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have fun, and we'll see you all later.
See ya.
Look to the skies.
And
Never know what you see.
look behind you, because you also never know what you see. See y'all.
See ya.
Bye.